Hey folks, so I want to talk about the last 6 months of my experience with the iPhone 16 Pro, the iPhone 15 Pro, the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, the Pixel 9, the Pixel 9 Pro, and the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Currently, my daily is the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and I'm going to go over the reasons why I've chosen this over all of the other devices, and I'm going to try to condense it in under 10 minutes, so wish me luck. First things first, the iPhone 16 Pro this year, worst iPhone I've ever used. And I can say that with the utmost confidence. It was released when it shouldn't have been released. It was not ready for prime time. They came out with a gimmicky feature this year where they added a shutter button on the side right here. It's hit or miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then if you hold your phone like I do, there's a lot of accidental presses where you accidentally open your camera. Very, very annoying. The other thing that I noticed is that the iPhone locks up quite a bit this year. It's just not consistent. I used to always say that the iPhone worked or it just worked until it didn't. Now I can just say it just doesn't. The other thing is the iPhone came out this year with this whole huge spread of marketing on AI, and they came out guns not loaded, basically. I mean, they were just blowing smoke. The AI features weren't even ready when they announced their device, and now they're just rolling out AI in increments. That's ridiculous. Samsung and Google have been on top of the AI stuff for quite some time now. And the fact that Apple is that far behind, it's just not acceptable anymore. The other thing with the plain or the base model iPhone 16, it's still a 60 hertz refresh rate screen. I mean, you can get a low end Android phone that has a 90 hertz refresh rate screen. So that's unacceptable, especially if you're charging $800 for a device. That processor upgrade with the A18 Pro versus the A17 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro, it's a marginal upgrade. So I would say to any iPhone user that's really, really contemplating, if they've got a 15 Pro and they're like, well, I just want to get the newest device, I want the 16 Pro, don't do it. There's no real upgrades to make it worth getting this year, or I should say now last year. The 16 Pro is in some instances worse than the 15 Pro. The 15 Pro has better cellular connectivity, and that's because Apple went with a different device for their modem this year, and it was a Samsung. I think it was like an X70 or X71. It actually gets worse cellular reception than the iPhone 15 Pro. So if you're inside a building with an iPhone 16 Pro and then you have an iPhone 15 Pro, you're going to get better reception with an iPhone 15 Pro than a 16 Pro. That's not acceptable, considering it's an upgrade and you're paying $1,000 for a device, or now $1,200 for the Pro Max. It just doesn't make sense to pay more for something and get less. The other upgrade that they did on the 16 Pro this year was that ultra wide camera. And honestly, when you're comparing it side by side with a 15 Pro, the ultra wide camera, that upgrade is really marginal. You can't really tell the difference unless you're like, zooming in on a giant screen and pixel peeping. You might be able to see a little bit of more detail with the 16 series, but overall, it's just not worth it. That said, if you like that 5x telephoto zoom on a smaller device, then yeah, maybe you don't want the 15 Pro Max because it's too big, but you want that 5x telephoto zoom to zoom in, then yes, you can get that on the 16 Pro series. But honestly, that 5x telephoto zoom lens sucks if you're trying to take pictures of multiple people. It's really only good if you're trying to take, like let's just say you want to take a portrait photo of one person. You have to stand so far away. It's really only good like if you're just trying to take pictures of stuff or video of something that's a little bit further. And honestly, it's really not that much better than the 15 Pro with the 3X. Honestly, it's just not. This year, I would say, or last year now, I would say the worst release from any manufacturer in the US, from like a major manufacturer standard, was the iPhone 16 series. So that means let's talk more about the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra and the Pixel series. I started out as soon as Google announced their Pixel. I ended up getting two Pixel 9 devices, one for my wife, one for myself, because I didn't want to go Pro. I wanted to just test out the base model and see how it did. And it was really surprising to me. I was very surprised with how well the base Pixel 9 performed overall, because that Tensor chip, ever since Google kind of left the Snapdragon arena and then they went into their Tensor chips with Samsung, which is essentially just built on their Exynos, infrastructure. they had a lot of issues with performance. The Pixel 6 series was just riddled with bugs, had a lot of problems, a lot of software updates to try to make it a little bit better, and still had problems. The 7 fixed a lot of those problems, and then the 8 really fixed pretty much any problem that they had. And then the 9 came out. And this year with the Pixel 9 series, everything is consistent. Everything just works. Everything across the board. If you're worried about the ecosystem as far as your apps working, everything works really, really well on the Pixel devices. If you're an Apple person, you're like, well, I'm really locked into the ecosystem of Apple. I would suggest if you're really tired of Apple and all the problems that they've had, specifically with the 16 series and the fact that they've announced this 16 Pro that doesn't even have AI and all of these bugs that are occurring with the Apple, I would look into the Pixel because the Pixel is the closest thing to an iPhone feeling that you can get. And honestly, they even made it look like the old iPhone 13 and 14 series, Pro series, I should say. And it's just comfortable. Look, playing around with the Pixel 9, I was super, super happy. I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to go to the 9 Pro XL. Went to that, and I was like, well, maybe it's too big. So I went back to the 9 Pro, and the 9 Pro was really good too, but the 9 Pro XL has faster charging, and honestly, it's very comfortable to hold. The 9 Pro in general was it wasn't too small, it was just a little too short. The 9 Pro XL is longer, it feels more comfortable to hold, it just is a nice phone in general. It's very comfortable, it's very consistent. So one of the things that I really liked about, obviously, the Pixel 9 series, besides the consistency across the board, was the AI that they implemented into it. The call features, as far as like the actual assistant that answers the phone for you if you don't know what the number is, and the spam features built into it are absolutely amazing. Gemini does an exceptional job with almost everything. It's a great daily personal assistant, and it just works. So going back to what I was saying with everything working really well, the app ecosystem here is amazing. Everything works. All the apps work really, really well. Now, if you're a camera enthusiast and you're really big on point and shoot, one thing that I love about the Pixel devices specifically is that the Pixel is great for if you've got kids, because they're always moving and they're always, all over the place. And I noticed with the Pixel 9 and 9 Pro versus the iPhone 16 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra is that there was no motion blur when you're taking photos of moving objects with your kids. The Samsung S24 Ultra really had a hard time with this as far as that shutter lag. Almost every single photo I would take with my kids, unless they were staying perfectly still, had a lot of motion blur, which I really was not a fan of. I like the camera setup on the S24 Ultra, but we'll go into that in a minute. The Pixel's the most consistent when it comes to the point and shoot camera. It is significantly better with their video recording capabilities this year than over the previous years. The ecosystem is great. The phone works really well. The speakers sound good. The Wi-Fi connection is great. Bluetooth connectivity is great. Cellular connectivity is great. Touch latency is great. The haptic feedback on this bad boy, absolutely amazing. And with AI, it actually has some features where it will literally figure out, based on the sound around you, how strong the haptic feedback needs to be, which is pretty amazing. And then you have the other features that the Pixels have always had, like the always-on display with the music recognition that scrolls across the bottom if you want music recognitions with a song playing and you want to hear, you don't know what it is and you want to know what it is. You just look down and it tells you exactly what it is. I mean, everything just works really well. And I know that I sound really biased. I'm not an Android fan. I'm not a Pixel fan in general. I typically always kind of go back and forth. But this year, or I should say now, last year, the Pixel just works and everything is really, really good. Now let me go on to the S24 Ultra because I have had plenty of time with the S24 Ultra. The processor on the S24 Ultra with the Snapdragon Gen 3, it is, as far as performance-wise, more powerful than the Tensor 4 series in the Pixel 9. However, the user interface on the Samsung S24 series is a little bit clunky, and even if you go into developer options and mess with like your transitions where you try to speed it up a little bit by going to like 0.5 for the screen transitions versus the 1, it still just doesn't seem as fluid and as speedy as the Pixel 9 Pro or 9 Pro XL. So if I'm like just swiping back and forth, if I'm going into my apps, everything just works. My app drawer, everything's fast, everything's fluid. Going into applications like my camera, absolutely. I mean, it's just amazing. It's super, super fast. And so my kid is calling for me, but I just think it works, and it works really, really well. Hey, buddy. And it takes good photos, especially if you got little guys like this. The S24 series, it just doesn't do that. It's a great phone, don't get me wrong. The screen brightness gets up to 2600 nits on the S24 Ultra. The anti-reflective screen, say hi. Hi. The anti-reflective screen is great, but it's still not as good as the Pixel 9 Pro XL series. And this thing gets up to 3000 nits outdoors, which is absolutely amazing. And that anti-reflective technology that you put on the S24 Ultra, if you put a screen protector on it, it doesn't matter anyway. You might as well just say goodbye. You gonna go back to watching your show, buddy? What's on TV? What's that? What do you see? What's that? Are you gonna dance with that guy? You gonna go dance? He's watching Coco Melon. They love it. I don't really like it. You wanna hang out with Daddy? Yeah, I see. I see that. Bottom line, if you want a device that works really well, and I went over my 10-minute mark, sorry, but if you want a device that works really well and doesn't give you problems, and if you're an iPhone user, you're coming over from the iPhone camp and you want something that feels kind of similar or familiar, I would suggest going with the Pixel 9, 9 Pro, or 9 Pro XL this year. It's probably going to be one of the best devices up until the next Pixel.